So the resumption now is specifically for them to prepare for their examinations.
Chairman FCT Task Force Team on COVID-19 warned that any school accommodating students other than the JSS3 and SS3 at this period will be acting contrary to government's directive and will face disciplinary action.
We may not be able to go around all single schools yet, or we'll be going around the schools and ensuring that defaulting schools are properly called to order. Defaulting schools are asked to do what is right, and should they refuse to do what is right here, then we'll be left with no option than to bring them before the mobile court. Subsequently, if we see that lives are threatened, we'll approach the court and seek for seal-up orders.
FCT Situation Room on COVID-19 is also making efforts to ensure that schools are given all needed attention and response.
We've been receiving calls since the announcement was made. Parents calling to express concern about the safety of their children when they go back to school, and we assure them that as far as FCT is concerned, they are going to get the best for their children. They shouldn't entertain any fear. And the Chairman Secretary Education Body took some journalists also around for them to see what has been done. They have designated some rooms in their schools as isolation center based on what the NCDC and Prime Minister of Education gave as guidelines to be followed. So all those protocols for FCT we are not going to have problems because the ministers are on top of the game.
The teachers are advised to take care of themselves and also take up role of enforcement and compliance to the COVID-19 protocols. Since the country's index case was reported on 27 February this year, just 2 weeks before the World Health Organization declared coronavirus a pandemic, the federal government, through its ministries, departments and agencies, has been coordinating a multi-sectoral response for the country through various programs and interventions.
What the PTF, who Mr. Bob Mustafa, the SGF, who stood in for President Muhammadu Buhari, had said very clearly, is that we cannot fight COVID-19 as well as not grow the economy. And that may be why the interstate travel ban was lifted for persons to actually move goods, persons to actually move and do business adequately.
Government says, okay, you have a small car, fine. You have to carry one person in front, two behind, with you, making 4 people in that vehicle.
The first point of aiding passengers when boarding transportation to their destination is the bus stop or motor park. Some passengers say there is a need to enforce compliance for passengers that have continued to violate the laid down directives.
Some put face mask, most doesn't.
Yes, they comply. 2 at the back and one at the front with no marks.
The National Union of Road Transport Workers, NURTW, on their part, promised continuous sensitization of their members, especially the drivers, to adhere to COVID-19 protocols.
We are distributing all this to all our motor parks across the nation.
Directorate of Road Traffic Services and Abuja Environmental Protection Board says mobile court activities have helped in enforcing the Presidential Task Force Directive on COVID-19.
People and commuters, as well as the community generally, need to take more responsibility. Our personnel used to go around to ensure that these garages at least have running water.
Since we have started the COVID-19 prosecution under the APB mobile court, it's been very, very effective because of the fact that we have to carry out some enforcement measures.
Information gotten from authorities indicate that over 26,000 road transport violators have so far been convicted at various mobile courts in the Federal Capital Territory.
Beautiful places, and Abuja is beautiful. Together we can make it even more beautiful. Thank you for being a part of this program today. Join us next week for another interesting episode. From me, Rahab, it is bye for now.
If it be like say you know well, like it's something they do you. And you feel say, you believe say, you get a seed it do you. And your body no researchy, like it's something they do you. No let panic finish you, you go win all. Self-isolate for the sake of all the people.
NTA, you can't beat the rich.
And there's the start. Promises to Cheryl. Winds up that right hand.
Archbishop of basketball, goal! He hung on that net like a stalk up a tree.
NTA Sports 24 brings you all sports, all time and all day. Tune in to watch NTA Sports 24 on Star Times Channel 270, StarSat on Channel 434 and Free TV on Channel 731. NTA Sports 24, where sports thrive.
You can follow us on all our social media platforms: Facebook at NTA Network News, Instagram at NTA Network, Twitter at NTA News Now, YouTube at NTA News Online, or visit www.nta.ng. For live streaming, visit www.nta.ng/live. Now, you can stay updated on the go, be it on your TV, iPhone, laptop, or iPad, or download the NTA mobile application from your Play Store or App Store. NTA, you can't beat the rich.
Do you not know that our enemies have no face? They are indigents of no state. They come from no place. And if this boat capsizes, every one of us will go under. So when the drums sound, let everybody answer. Do not say, I am the Iroko when the forest is burning. Do not say, I am the Obeche when the forest is burning. Our differences will not stop us from perishing together. So when the drums sound, let everybody answer.
I am Elizabeth Abali. I am.
Godwin Obaseki wins Edo governorship election, secures second term in office.
Godwin Obaseki satisfy the requirement of the law is hereby declared the winner and returned elected.
President Buhari congratulates Governor Godwin Obaseki as Edo residents celebrate in the state capital.
We thank Muhammad Buhari for giving free and fair election. We are very happy.
Today, we have gained what is called political freedom.
Joint Health Sector Union, Johesu, course of strike.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall review the just concluded Edo governorship election.
All right, it was long awaited. Initially, it was just a matter of months away. Then it became weeks, hours, until the D-Day. And as we speak, the September 19th Edo governorship election has gone down, should I say, the annals of history, Kingsley.
Indeed, the Edo governorship election, which generated so much heat in the polity, especially in the build-up to voting, has been won and lost.
The Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, yesterday declared Godwin Obaseki, candidate of the People's Democratic Party, the PDP, winner of the election, having scored the highest number of votes cast on Saturday.
Now, Governor Obaseki polled a total of 307,955 votes to defeat his closest rival, Pastor Osagie Ezeyamu, of the All Progressives Congress, APC, who scored 223,619 votes.
Now, the PDP candidate won with a difference of 84,336 votes cast over APC's Ezeyamu. Now, Obaseki also won 13 of the 18 local government areas in Edo State, while Ezeyamu won 5.
Now, more importantly, Obaseki of the PDP also scored more than 25% of the votes cast in 2/3 of the local government areas in the state to satisfy the constitutional requirement to be declared winner and governor-elect for his second term. It's also on record that Governor Obaseki has now twice defeated Osagie Ezeyamu in the Edo governorship race, first on the platform of the APC in 2016 and now as the PDP standard bearer.
Now, one interesting feature of the Edo governorship election, which is of course receiving applause from observers, was the high turnout of eligible voters, many of whom defied the heavy downpour in some instances to exercise their franchise for the candidate of their choice last Saturday.
Now, the impressive turnout was reflected in the 550,242 total votes that were cast out of the number of accredited voters. You have over 557,000 of accredited voters, representing some 98, if not 99% of voter turnout. But not exactly. That's to say, voter turnout usually is measured against, if you like, the number of registered voters, or in this case, the number of voters who have actually collected their PVCs.
Indeed, Kingsley, wherever it is, that was quite an impressive turnout of eligible voters, considering the circumstance and, of course, apprehension, which perhaps showed the enthusiasm of the Edo electorate to exercise their franchise and decide who governs them in the next 4 years. Now, the large turnout also took a toll on the COVID-19 protocols for the election, as, you know, observing physical distance was a major challenge, and it was observed in quite a number of polling units across the state, Kingsley.
Of course, Claire. Now, the difficulty in complying with the COVID-19 protocols, some observers said, was compounded by the late arrival of materials on election day, as well as faulty card readers in some cases, which then led to impatience and restlessness of intending voters.
All right, there were pockets of skirmishes here and there, such as ballot box snatching, vote buying or trading as you may, and shooting of an INEC official in Esako Central local government area of Edo State. However, the election was generally adjudged peaceful, free and fair by most accredited observer groups who reported, although minimal violence, contrary to the prediction of pundits before the election.
Now, observers have also applauded INEC's deployment of technology for the transmission of results from the polling unit to its online portal, noting that this recourse to technology helped greatly in reducing, if not eliminating, the chances for potential manipulation of the outcome of the elections.
All right, so now that the elections have come and gone, what are lessons learned from that election? That's the Edo governorship election. How can the lessons be applied to improve Nigeria's electoral process?
All right, now that shall form part of our conversation segment as we review the just concluded Edo governorship election. On today's edition of Good Morning Nigeria, I'm Kingsley Osadolo and I welcome you to the program, reaching you live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. And we are broadcasting from our nation's capital, Abuja.
I am Claire Adilabu Abdul Razak and welcoming you once again to the program. It's Monday's edition and of course it broadcasts live on the network service. We have other complementary segments that will be coming your way shortly after, of course, the morning news by Ifeoma Ojenta. There will also be business newspaper review much later. So for now, let's go over to the news studio and Ifeoma Ojenta is with the news. Ifeoma, good morning.
Good morning, Claire, and Kingsley. Here is the morning news. President Muhammadu Buhari Sunday evening granted audience to his Ghanaian counterpart, Nana Akufo-Addo. State House correspondent Adamu Sambo reports that President Akufo-Addo, who was recently elected chairman of ECOWAS, came to Nigeria on a familiarization visit to the headquarters of the sub-regional organization in Abuja. President Buhari and the Ghanaian leader held talks behind closed doors that lasted about 1 hour, and details of their discussions were not made public. President Nana Akufo-Addo could not say much when confronted by NTA News.
We recently elected chairman of the community, so I'm coming to see the people at the headquarters. But I felt I should come and visit President Buhari for us to talk about matters of mutual concern. So it's an informal visit. And he was good enough to invite me to dinner.
So those matters of mutual concern.
We'll be talking.
The Ghanaian leader who is seeking for a second term in office was elected chairman of ECOWAS at the 57th Extraordinary Summit of the Heads of State and Government held in Niger Republic on the 7th of this month. The incumbent governor of Edo State and candidate of the People's Democratic Party in Saturday's governorship election has been elected for a second term. He polled a total number of 307,955 votes to beat his closest opponent, APC candidate Pastor Osage Iziyamu, who scored 223,619 votes.
Godwin N. Obaseki of PDP, having satisfied the requirement of the law in meeting the 25% in two-thirds of the local government area in the state and having a margin of lead higher than the counted votes, is hereby declared the winner and returned elected. Signed by my minister.
Meanwhile, President Muhammadu Buhari has formally congratulated Governor Godwin Obaseki for winning the just concluded Edo governorship election, urging him to show grace and humility in victory. In his reaction to the outcome of the election as announced by INEC, the president commended the electoral process, saying democracy will mean nothing if the votes of the people don't count or their mandate fraudulently tampered. In a statement, President Buhari said his commitment to free and fair elections is firm because without free and fair elections, the foundation of our political and moral authority will be weak. The president added that he has consistently advocated for free and fair elections in the country because it is the bedrock of true democratic order. The Nigerian leader commended the people of Edo State, the parties, candidates and security agencies for conducting themselves responsibly. In the meantime, the leadership of the People's Democratic Party has lauded the innovations brought into the nation's electoral process and what it described as remarkable improvements by security agencies as demonstrated during the last governorship election in Edo State. The party's National Publicity Secretary stated his position while reacting to the victory of the party's candidate, Governor Godwin Obaseki.
This victory, as won by the people of Edo State, is historic.
Meanwhile, the All Progressives Congress, APC, has alleged foul play in the September 19th governorship election, while calling on its members to remain calm as party leaders are already studying the results to decide on the next step. In a release signed by the chairman APC Media Campaign Council, John Meyaki, the party alleged illicit tampering with results to shore up PDP numbers and mark down APC's score. The party also frowned at what it terms arbitrary arrest of its local party members during the election and called on its members to stay calm, as the party will soon come up with its decision on the alleged electoral malpractice. And Edo residents trooped out to jubilate over the victory of Governor Godwin Obaseki shortly after the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, declared him winner of Saturday's election.
We are very happy. We thank Muhammad Buhari for giving free and fair election. We are very happy.
Today, we have gained what is called political freedom.
To health matters now. The Joint Health Sector Union, JOHESU, and the Assembly of Healthcare Professional Associations have directed their members to suspend the 7-day nationwide warning strike from Sunday midnight, 20th September. JOHESU chairman said by this notice, all health workers under JOHESU shall return to work on Monday, 21st of September 2020 across all federal health institutions in the country. He added that JOHESU will continue to use all legitimate means to defend the rights and welfare of its members in the health sector by demanding that public health system in Nigeria be sustained and adequately financed for efficient, effective and affordable healthcare service delivery. Now, new figures from the Nigeria Center for Disease Control, NCDC, shows 97 new cases of COVID-19 have been detected in the country, bringing the total number of confirmed cases to 57,242 in Nigeria. Of these 97 new cases, Lagos has 46, Kwara 12, Rivers 11, Adamawa, Niger, Ogun and Osun states have 4 new cases each, while Ekiti, Imo and Kaduna each recorded 3 new cases. Plateau State has 2 new cases and the FCT has 1 new case. With 7,575 cases currently active, Lagos has a total of 18,943 confirmed cases. The FCT has 5,551 cases and Oyo has so far recorded 3,231 COVID-19 cases. 48,569 patients have been discharged after recovery, with 1,098 deaths so far. And that's the morning news. The program continues with Kingsley and Claire after this break.
She cries. She cries in anguish and in pain. She bears the scourge of her grief. She toils in vain for justice and succumbs to silence. He gloats over his malady. Like a beast, he pounces with no remorse. Her cry means nothing. Her pain feeds her shame. Like an orphan, she's left to grieve in solitude. But no more will she cry in vain. Her adversaries will henceforth bear the brunt of their cruelty. Rape is evil. Rape is a plague, a pandemic of monumental consequences. We must unite and kick it out of our society.
Connect with NTA and stand against rape and rapists. This message is brought to you by the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA.
As a strong immune system increases the chances of victims surviving COVID-19, a corruption-free society creates opportunities for citizens to thrive and prosper. Build your immunity. Stop corruption now. Report all acts of corruption to ICPC on this toll-free number 0800 22 55 4272. This message is brought to you by ICPC and NTA.
Close Up Deep Action with antibacterial formula and deep cleaning gel keeps your teeth clean and protected. Close Up Deep Action. Enjoy long-lasting fresh breath and more.
Yes, that's the painful effect of what corruption costs you. But what does corruption cost us all? Watch Bad Guys on NTA Network, 6 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. every Wednesday from the Akin Fadeyi Foundation. Bad Guys. Who are the bad guys? Join us.
Sensitivity is a short, sharp pain that people experience when they have something hot or cold getting to the nerve of the tooth. If the sensitivity is left alone, it may get worse. Dentists recommend Sensodyne. It's able to calm the nerve of the tooth. The proof's in the results. It works. Sensitivity is a short, sharp pain that people experience when they have something hot or cold getting to the nerve of the tooth. If the sensitivity is left alone, it may get worse. Dentists recommend Sensodyne. It's able to calm the nerve of the tooth. The proof's in the results. It works.
You're watching Good Morning Nigeria on NTA's network service. Next is business news with our correspondent, Comforter Modu.
The coronavirus pandemic impacted negatively on global and domestic markets, jobs and critical economic sectors. To cushion the impact, experts want government's programs and policies to promote entrepreneurship towards self-reliance.
What we need now is skill development, entrepreneurship, and something for these youths, because these white-collar jobs that they are looking for is not really available as much as possible. And what we are looking at is to craft a bill that will now make the year post their graduation that will be focused on like a 1-year program of skill acquisition.
The Nigerian stock market over the weekend had a total turnover of 1.139 billion shares, worth 12.692 billion naira in 17,109 deals traded by investors on the floor of the Nigerian Stock Exchange. Comfort Amadou.
Many thanks to you, Comfort, for the business package. Coming up next is newspaper review.
Tebi, our newspaper reviewer, is with us on the studios. Baya, good morning and welcome.
Good morning, Kinsley. Good morning, Claire.
Good
morning, Nigeria. Good to see you too.
That's right. Okay, so let's begin with the Punch newspaper. Punch, the lead story is on the outcome of the Edo election, and it says, wild jubilation as Obaseki defeats Zeyamu, and APC alleges foul play. You have two riders. PDP candidate scores 307,955, and party says we've retired godfathers and caged lions. Another rider says Obaseki was busy rigging while raising false alarm and claims beating opposition party. Details of that story you can find on page 2. And you have a other story there, just below that, says Gambari leads Buhari's delegation to Zauzau Emir's burial. Details on page 9. 80% Niger Education Ministry staff with forged certificates. That's according to a panel. And that's on page 14. And Sule orders evacuation of Nasarawa flood victims. Ganduje okays 880 million naira for schools renovation ahead reopening. And 2 vandals electrocuted in Gombe and Benue. And that's according to the JEDC, there's a distribution company in that area. Now let's go up a bit again. This time, 2 earpieces beside the nameplate. EFCC has recovered 4.4 billion naira looted from our agency. And that's according to the NHIS boss. And 8 burnt to death as bus crashes on Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. Details on pages 4 and 5. Above the nameplate, foreign reserves rise by $140.9 million, now $35.81 billion. Health workers resume as Johesu ends warning strike. 78 firms bid to rehabilitate pipelines and depots. That's according to NNPC. That's on page 40. And bandits on reprisal kidnapped 42 persons in Zamfara. Claire.
Yeah, Kingsley, let me take from the Daily Trust. And the lead story is on the passing away of the Emir of Zazzau. It's right there, late Emir of Zazzau, and who has been buried in Zaria yesterday. He, of course, attended the throne at the age of 39, we're told, and died at the age of 84, leaving behind 4 wives, several children, and great-grandchildren. And you see the picture there. Okay, the story is just below the picture story there. Edo governorship, how Obaseki defeated Ize Iyamo. It comes with 3 riders. Buhari Lord's election advises Obaseki. Godfatherism has ended, Atiku. An APC campaign council rejects results. Bread scarcity rages as bakers strike in Lagos. Abuja, page 22, is trending at the bottom of the paper. Slow work on Dutse Alaji Buhari Road worries motorists on page 42. And man 50 buries grandson alive in Bauchi. It's on page 12. And trending stories a little below the nameplate. We have quite a number of stories there. But BBC Africa Eye on Lagos explosion. New evidence contradicts official explanation. And that's the outlook of this paper. Front page. Bayo.
Yes. Let's start with the story of the death of the Emir of Zazzau. Condolences has commenced to pour into Zazzau following the death of Alhaji Shehu Idris, who died after a brief illness and was buried yesterday. He ascended the throne in 1975 at the age 39. I remember that time I was a student in College of Arts and Science, Zaria. Yes, he is the 18th Emir of the Fulani lineage. He was actually the secretary to the then Emir, Muhammadu Aminu, and later on appointed as the district head of Zaria. And immediately the Emir died, he ascended the throne as the 18th Emir. President Muhammadu Buhari has sent condolence message to Governor Nasir El-Rufai, the people of Kaduna State, and the people of Zazzau Emirate. He said Nigeria has lost a monarch whose contribution to promoting unity and peaceful coexistence cannot be forgotten for years. He also said that former military president Ibrahim Badamasi Babangida also described him as a bridge between various ethnic and religious groups, and he was a force in keeping Kaduna State as a cosmopolitan. May his soul rest in peace. Meanwhile, candidate Godwin Obaseki of the PDP has been declared winner of the Edo governorship elections. The returning officer, Professor Akpofure Rimruki, Vice Chancellor of the Federal University of Petroleum Resources, declared that candidate Godwin Obaseki scored 307,955 votes to beat his closest rival, Osage Ize Iyamo, who polled 223,619 votes. There were jubilations in the parts of Edo State among PDP members, while the All Progressive Congress members in Edo State alleged that there were falsification of results. Governor Obaseki had defected to the People's Democratic Party following his failure to clinch the ticket of the All Progressive Congress ticket in June, just as his lead opponent had also decamped to join the All Progressive Congress. The electoral process was tension-soaked, but thanks to the providence, the monarch in Benin called them to order, and also following the peace accord signed, substantially peace prevailed throughout Edo State. There were a few incidences, however, of violence, some with Ipoba, Oka, Ego, and Esako Central. In fact, there was an instance where INEC staff was shot and wounded. Substantially, the election is judged by all, even observers, even politicians, to be free, fair, credible, and transparent. President Muhammadu Buhari has congratulated Governor Godwin Obaseki and enjoined him to show grace and humility in victory. He hailed the peaceful conduct of the elections and reiterated his commitment to free, fair elections as a foundation to strengthening political and moral authority. He declared, democracy will mean nothing if votes of the people don't count or if their mandate is fraudulently tampered with. The President has praised the people of Edo State, security agencies, political parties, and all participants for conducting themselves responsibly. Governors, especially of the People's Democratic Party, have all congratulated Governor Godwin Obaseki. They all identified INEC as deserving of praise, as well as the peaceful and credible conduct of the election, and police also for maintaining neutrality. Right. The other report is related to the status of COVID-19. We are now in the week 39 since the COVID-19 began, and Tribune reports that last week recorded one of the lowest in the last 6 weeks of COVID-19. The first week of September was reduced. In the second week, it shot up. By the third week, there were indications that we are beginning to flatten the curve. In fact, the chairman of the Presidential Task Force indicated that we are beginning to flatten the curve, but there was still need for us to keep vigilance about COVID-19 protocols. As of today, yesterday we had 97 cases in 12 states, which has brought the national total now to 57,242. So far, 48,569 have been discharged. 1,098 compatriots of ours have died since February from COVID-19 across 36 states of the Federation. 7,575 of our counterparts are in hospitals undergoing treatment. So, COVID-19 is still here and we need to continue with the protocol. The World Health Organization has indicated that there are prospects of vaccine early 2021. But yes, last week, the Chinese Center for Disease Control said that they are in the process of evolving 4 COVID-19 virus vaccines that are in their final stage. They said 3 of them have already been offered for essential workers under the emergency program that started in July. The 3 clinicals are proceeding simultaneously, and they are hoping that by November we could have a vaccine from China. The 4th one is also being worked on. You will recall that Russia also indicated its vaccine, and President Vladimir Putin even indicated that his daughter had taken the vaccine and he's feeling all right. But bipolar politics had undermined the credibility of the vaccine from Russia. You will recall also that at the Oxford University, there were research for vaccine, but that was halted temporarily because one of the volunteers suffered some relapses. But they continued last week, and they still hope that by early next year, we will have a vaccine on the horizon.
All right, interesting. But there's a story on the front page of the Punch. The story has been trending for some weeks now. And the headline here says, 80% Niger Education Ministry staff with forged certificates. And that's according to a panel that's been, on the one hand, investigating the phenomenon of ghost workers in that state. And in this case now, what has been revealed is that about 80% of the staff in the Ministry of Education do not probably have the requisite qualification. A printer who was said to have printed the forged certificates with which the persons gained employment has also been apprehended by the police. There was an earlier report of a ghost worker who was busted in the course of the panel's investigation. The ghost worker was on grade level 10 and he had made progression in the course of the years.
Boosting in the
that's right.
of the
That's
service.
right. He didn't know that it was a brother or relation of his who had put his name on the payroll as a staff. So when the time came for Operation Show Your Face, as the saying goes, the gentleman came and he couldn't answer any question. It turns out that he's an Okada rider.
Well, the situation in Niger is very dire, and I think we must praise the state government for having the courage to unravel all this. Last week, I was shocked when I read that about 313 ghost workers have been responsible for about 8.5 million of salary that have been paid over the years. And so this is a bold step to nip that corruption that has prevailed within that public service directly in the board.
Yeah, I think that Kogi State, a couple of years ago, embarked on a similar measure. I hope that they have followed through with the outcome of their clean sweep of ghost workers from the system. I recall we had one of the officials join us on Good Morning Nigeria on that occasion to discuss what at that time they referred to as diaspora ghost workers.
Yes.
Now, in the case of Kogi at the time, who were the diaspora ghost workers? You have somebody who is based in Abuja, who doesn't render any service to the government of Kogi State, but in the meantime is on the payroll of the Kogi State government. And from time to time, of course, he gets a stipend from whoever is manipulating the records to continue to maintain his or her
presence
name
on the payroll.
on the roll of genuine staff of Kogi State. So they use that phrase, diaspora ghost workers, plus, of course, other persons who are not qualified to be in the system. And I think that this is something that the states have to do from time to time. One of the best ways to get around this, of course, is the IPPIS, which the federal government has introduced and practiced for some years now, even though some persons do indicate that sometimes it can be bypassed, particularly in the agencies. It's one of the ways to get around it. And it is not simply sufficient to publish these stories or indicate that, persons who forge certificates have been apprehended or ghost workers have been cleared out. Where are those officers
who are responsible?
That's right, who prepared what you used to refer to as pay vouchers in those days. There should be accounts officers. Those who prepare the pay vouchers, what happens to them? That should be a job for the ICPC. If the state governments are incapacitated in terms of prosecution, hand them over to ICPC straight away.
In the case of Kogi, there were two categories of diaspora workers. You recall that Kogi was...
Diaspora ghost workers.
No, there's diaspora ghost workers and there are diaspora workers.
Yes.
You recall that Kogi was part of Kwara State when it was carved out. And at a point in time, some part of Kogi was also part of Benue State. So they have some workers who were serving in the service of Kwara State and others in the service of Benue State. Those they refer as diaspora pensioners, which Kogi State was responsible for. So diaspora ghost worker was the second level of diaspora persons that were on the payroll.
On the payroll, fraudulently. That's the way to
that's
be.
why it's fraud.
I mean, there was no question about it. Following state creation exercises, the states had to share their assets and then also had to split their staff and their personnel. But there always was a deadline for migration. So if you migrated from, say, Kogi to Kwara, it then became the responsibility of Kwara, unless a double ledger was then kept to say, okay, you are Kwara, you are receiving, you are also here in Kogi, you are also receiving. So.
Okay, gentlemen, let's look at the editorials for today, and it's taken from the Daily Sun. The focus is on states' worrisome domestic debt. And according to this paper, of the 6 geopolitical zones, the Southwest is reported to have the worst domestic debt exposure of 1.5 trillion. That's 26.2%. The South is next, North Central, Northwest, Northeast, and Southeast, with the lowest among the subnational debts, accounting for 7.7% in that order. Now, it says, for instance, between 2014 and 2018, states' domestic debt rose from 1.71 trillion to 4 trillion. That's 2.69 trillion increase. Okay, so this paper, that's the Daily Sun, is saying that there seems to be non-compliance with the provisions of the Fiscal Responsibility Act on borrowing, as well as the advisory coming from Debt Management Office, that's the DMO.
Yes, the editorial is saying that the total debt owed by 36 states of the Federation is placed about 4.19 trillion as at June 2020. And he said most of them are owed to contractors and others are bonds from capital market. And the editorial is very critical in the sense that this forms part of the overall debt that Nigeria owes, which is now about 31.1 trillion naira. And the sad thing with the states is that 15% of only internally generated revenue form part of their outlook. Most of the time, 85%, they depend on federal allocation from the FAC. And the editorial is saying that this cannot be sustained. And therefore, they should heed the call from the Debt Management Office, as well as the Nigerian Extractive Industries and Transparency Initiative, that they had to manage the bloated loans and concentrate on internally generated revenue so that they can survive. The Vice President had already raised an alarm, cautioned the states that the situation cannot continue unless there are deliberate efforts to engender internally generated revenue.
That's right. The ultimate question to ask is the DMO failing in its responsibility in granting approvals for states to continue to access loans and facilities?
We see, there seems to be a double speak about this loan. Sometimes DMO will say that the loans that have been accumulated so far is within the tolerable range. We have not exceeded the bonds. There's no gainsaying the fact that if you borrow for infrastructure, they will eventually pay for themselves. But where you have to borrow for consumption, for salaries, that is where there is the danger.
Not about that. So.
Okay, Raya, thank you
Thank you
again, and do have a nice day. We'll see you again tomorrow.
Thank you.
All right, this is Good Morning Nigeria on the network service. Don't go away. We'll be right back with more stories.
Hi. I'm done. Really? Yes.
There's an easier way to get more data. Get more out of life with the new Airtel data plans. Dial *141# now. Data is life.
Airtel, the smartphone network. NTA TV College Jos, an affiliate of Ahmadu Bello University Zaria, is currently admitting students for its ordinary diploma programs in television journalism, television production, and television engineering. Interested candidates are advised to obtain relevant information concerning eligibility at our website at www.ntatvc.edu.ng or marketing department of any NTA station nationwide. For further information, contact Assistant Director, Marketing, NTA TV College Jos on 0803-314-4383 or the Academic Office of the College on 0806-980-9807. Announcer, Registrar.
Like every mother, I'm worried about dangerous insects, especially mosquitoes, which spread diseases like malaria to my loved ones. This year, I'm not afraid. I'm using new Mortein Instakill. New Mortein Instakill's improved formulation knocks down mosquitoes 2 times faster. Not even a single mosquito is spared because even one mosquito bite can cause malaria. Mortein Insta knocks down mosquitoes 2 times faster.
Ankara shopping with the right place. That one no fine. No nice. No, it's too dull. This one. Oh wow, it's beautiful. Omo, this fabric. It gon' fade though. Yeah.
Look, make I tell you something. The new area Ankara, it go take good care of it.
So right.
Not lie, not true.
And the price cheap.
Try new Ariel on your Ankara and colors now.
You're watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. For our conversation segment this morning, which is on a review of the Edo governorship election, we're going to have to take this background put together by our correspondent, Abdulsalam Jibril.
It is official. Governor Godwin Obaseki, the candidate of the People's Democratic Party, PDP, having scored the highest number of votes in Saturday's Edo State governorship election, has been declared the winner by the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC. Winning in 13 of the 18 local governments in Edo State, Godwin Obaseki polled 307,955 votes to defeat his main rival, Osage Ize Iyamo, of the All Progressives Congress, APC, who had 223,619 votes. He thus scored more than 25% of votes cast in 2/3 of the local governments in the state to satisfy the second constitutional requirement to be declared governor. With a high turnout of voters, observers have commended the security agencies, particularly the Nigerian police force, for their vigilance and professionalism. They also commended the electoral umpire, INEC, on the conduct of the election, particularly with the deployment of a dedicated online portal, INEC Result Viewing, IRV, which afforded Nigerians the opportunity to view results from polling units in real time. This deployment of technology, many observers believe, also reduced the chances for manipulation, which could arise while transporting results manually. Applauding the novel portal, some observers have urged INEC to improve on it with regard to speed of uploading the results in real time. While the much anticipated election did not record major or widespread irregularities, the election was not without incidents. Ballot box snatching, faulty card readers and pockets of violence were reported in some polling units during voting and collation. The election was conducted with compliance to some COVID-19 protocol, as officials were seen conducting temperature checks and requiring voters to use face masks before exercising their franchise. However, social distancing was conspicuously absent in a number of polling units. Going forward, what are the lessons learned from the Edo governorship election and how can they be applied to improve Nigeria's electoral process?
All right, let's escalate our conversation. And of course, it's on Edo governorship election. Of course, we're looking at the lessons learned. Quickly, let me introduce our guests here in Abuja studio. We have, as usual, Nick Dezang. He is the Director of Voter Education and Publicity of the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC. He was with us, of course, here last week. Thank you, Nick, for coming again.
Thank you for having me.
And you are all smiles. I'm wondering what's in the
Yes, you can see I'm beaming like a Cheshire cat this morning.
All right, let's see how far you sustain it. We also have here with us in the studio Dr. Ismail Bello, lecturer from Department of International Relations, Bayes University here in Abuja. Dr. Bello, thank you very much for
good morning, Nigerians. All right. Well, you asked why Nick is all smiles. Obviously, I believe the elections had been inconclusive, as we have seen in a number of instances. He would have been frowning now, thinking of how to respond to our first set of questions. But, of course, you've had deserving accolades for the Independent National Electoral Commission on what was achieved.
He's a happy man today.
On Saturday. So he's a happy man, but he still has a number of posters to respond to in the course of all. So we hope that your smile will last, but for how long, as Claire indicated, we're not quite sure. We have a guest joining us from our Benin Network studios. He was also with us on the eve of voting. It's Paul James, Program Manager, Yaga Africa, one of the, of course, election observer groups. Paul, pleasure to have you with us on the program again.
The pleasure is all mine. Good morning.
Your voice sounds sharper and more relaxed after the pent-up tension, shall we say, on the eve of voting. Now, you were right there on the spot. Give us a sense of what happened. And the basic question that everyone would ask is, was the outcome of the election a true reflection of the voters' wish, will, and actual voting?
Yeah, we did confirm as of afternoon yesterday that the outcome was a true reflection of what we saw at the polling unit level, given the parameters that we had also set out to observe. The election, albeit though had a few challenges as observed by your reporter. The election, the deployment on election day was early, but then there was challenge also with commencement. As of 7:30 a.m. on election day, although election was supposed to commence at 8:30, our observers reported that in 39% of the 2,627 polling units, INEC officials had arrived. At 8:30, when officially election was supposed to commence, only 4% of polling units have commenced election. But by 9:30, 69% of polling units had commenced. Deployment, again, I said, is early, and this is also, deployment didn't just start on election day. INEC started from the eve of the election to deploy all sensitive materials to all local governments. We deploy our observers to these locations, and even our board members were seen in some local governments, and they confirmed indeed that yes, materials have arrived, which for us was indicative that the process was going to commence early. So against the belief that the election will start at 8:30, we also decided to see whether INEC would deploy officials to the polling unit ahead of the commencement at 8:30. So we asked our observers to go to the polling unit as early as 7 a.m. in the morning. And by 7:30 a.m., the reports we got from the field indicated that 39% of those locations had INEC officials. And by all standards also in this election, INEC had also tried to mainstream gender. In most of the polling units, in fact, in 95% of this polling unit, at least 2 of the 4 INEC officials were women. 39% of the polling units also observed had INEC officials as presiding officers. To a large extent, yes, I would give them a pass mark on this election because the conduct even of the INEC ad hoc staff in most locations was professional. But again, we will also give them knocks in areas we think INEC did not do well. One area is also in the enforcement of the COVID-19 protocol.
Can you speak to us on this? Also, how militarized, so to speak, use of firearms, ratio to polling units? Can you give us some insights on how it went?
I think to a large extent, the security was professional on election day, albeit pockets of incidences in some polling units. We also suffer a bit of the security being unusually dramatic. To a large extent, they disrupted the activities in our own data center here in Benin for almost 3 hours. It took the intervention of the DIG for the security to allow the press to come and assess what we were doing in our center, and also our visitors that visited our data center. And it got us worried. If this is happening in our data center, what could be happening in the field? But we got to understand that it was the other way around in the field. People were able to express their franchise, and to a large extent, the security was professional. But then again, you had places that recorded incidents of sporadic shootings. You have a location in Esako Central, where there was a killing of a citizen. You have a location in Oriomon where there was sporadic shooting. In Igwebe local government also, there are places where political talks took over polling units and the security were there and they were helpless. Yeah, so I will say, yeah, as much as we are, there was also room for improvement. They did quite well, but then they also need to go back and audit their conduct from this election and see how they can make it better for future election.
All right. Paul, thank you very much. Claire, we'll return to Paul later. I do not think that there's been any report of any fatality arising from some of those instances that he just mentioned. Yes, there were some skirmishes, but I doubt if there are any reports of any person who's lost his life. A few bruises may have been sustained, by the individual. Some of the videos are also circulated, but those things are not excusable. Nick Dazang, Director of Voter Education and Publicity of INEC, will now bring you in to the conversation, so your smiles will vanish this time. What is INEC's interim assessment of the governorship election?
Well, we are yet to do a post-mortem of the conduct of the election, even though our virtual situation room was up and running until the outcome of the conduct of the election was declared yesterday. The Commission will certainly take a look at the conduct of this election and the lessons we have learned from the conduct of this election and how we will factor the lessons in the conduct of subsequent elections, particularly the Ondo governorship election, which is scheduled for 10th of October 2020, and 15 harmonized by-elections scheduled for 31st October 2020. I think the election speaks eloquently to the fact that when stakeholders work in concert, work diligently, work professionally, the outcome is fantastic. That's what we have seen in this instance. And the Commission will certainly latch on to this momentum, believing that, like Shakespeare once wrote, there is a tide in the affairs of men, which when taken at the flood leads to fortune, but omitted, all their journey is bound in shallows and misery. We have seen that, like I've said, if we work together and in concert, we'll make it. And I think it's a lesson not just for INEC, but for this country, that where there is synergy, where people work in congruence, you are likely to have a positive outcome.
You are yet to assess for INEC, but I'm sure you observed.
Yes.
So what would you say would be the hamstring for you in this election?
Well, there were several challenges with the election. First of all, in 1 or 2 cases, we had instances where staff did not deploy in time. And part of their complaint was that they did not see the advice for their training, that's their financial alert, and these things occur. From our experience in the Commission, some of the ad hoc staff give wrong account details, or they give account details of their siblings or their parents. And there's no way you see or cite an advice if you are giving the wrong account details. So these things happen. There are glitches, and we try to insist as we train the ad hoc staff that you must give us correct, account details. But at the end of the day, you see account details that are less than 10 digits, and it's certain. It's universal that these account details are 10 digits. But on close scrutiny, you see so many, and we have to call them back, to reconfirm the account details. And in an election, you don't have
so many such that you have the number of your ad hoc staff that were reported to have protested.
Yes, it was what led to the protest. And you see, because some of these polling units opened late, they compounded, issues regarding the observation of the COVID-19 regulations. Once a polling unit opens late, certainly voters will be restless. And in these particular polling units, you know, voters were desperate to cast their votes and leave. So even though most of them wore their face masks, in those particular polling units, they did not observe social distancing. And this is a big lesson we'll carry forward to Ondo. Now, we have also received reports of untoward happenings like vote buying.
Sorry, before you go to vote buying,
yes.
Still on the ad hoc staff who protested,
yes.
Were they expected to have their financial advice on before or after the election?
You see, there are stages. When we appoint the ad hoc staff, we train them. And in the course of, after the training, they are paid their allowances. And then, you know, when they conduct the elections again, they are paid subsequent allowances. They are in tranches. They come in tranches. And so I think when they discovered that others got their alerts and they didn't, of course, they were not happy and they protested. But going forward, we'll make sure that we are more diligent and we take care of
Precisely.
such challenges because they have consequences for the election.
Precisely.
Now I was saying that we also receive reports of subtle ways of
vote trading.
Vote, yes, even though we have co-opted the EFCC and the ICPC, you know, to see how we can checkmate this ugly trend. But it seems as if the politicians keep perfecting ingenious means, other modus operandi, other than the ones we knew before. From the reports we got and from our staff and some of the civil society organizations. And that means we have to go back and engage with the ICPC and the EFCC on this. We have to bring them up to speed. Assuming they also don't have these videos, we'll get them and share with them, you know. And I think that we have also seen that if you do a lot of voter education, you know, before the election, and you sustain that voter education, it also helps, you know, in assuring voters that they can come out and vote, particularly in the context of COVID-19. I observed that the turnout was quite impressive in spite of COVID-19, but it still fell short of the threshold, you know, that we reached in 2016. Because in 2016 we had voter turnout of 28%, but in this case we have voter turnout of 25%. So there's a drop of 3%. What we want to see is an increment in the turnout so that whoever secures a mandate, you know, exercises a mandate robustly given to him by the people of that state or by the people of his constituents. That's what we want to see.
While we are on the issue of turnout, let's deal with this. I'll just make this comment and bring in Dr. Ismail Bello before we get into other aspects. It's a bit confusing sometimes when we are calculating the percentage of voter turnout. You would say, let's say in Edo State now you had 2 million registered voters, and 78% of them, according to Paul James from our Benin Network Center, collected their PVCs. And then you had about 557,000 voters who are turning out, and you say that is 25%. How do you account for even those who have collected their PVCs? Have persons not moved? Have they not relocated? And if you relocate, of course, you do not, and if you do not then go and register in another polling area, your PVC will continue to read Edo State. That's one. And unfortunately, there have also been persons who have passed on. I mean, you know, persons may have lost his wife, may have lost the husband, or may have lost a sibling, and so on and so forth. All of these ones do not appear to be accounted for when you are saying voter turnout flat 25% on the basis of so many persons who were registered and so many PVCs that were collected. Let's bring you in at this point, Dr. Ismail Bello, to begin your analysis from there and then make a general comment on the conduct and outcome of the election.
So thank you very much for having me. You know, in Nigeria, we have a database issue So we hardly have a situation whereby people go to register death, although we register birth. So we hope that in the nearest future, the INEC and other stakeholders, particularly the NIMC and others, are able to come together to ensure that whenever there is death and that particular individual registered, his data should be captured and sent to the INEC. On a general note, when it comes to assessing the election, I must commend the Edo people. They have shown that they are very versed and they know what they want. Pre-election, we had issues of violence, and I must commend the National Peace Committee, the Oba of Bini, and even the political actors. We saw the situation whereby the governor of Edo State and his opponent, Izeyamu, came together, they hugged themselves at the Palace of Benin. It showed that they were willing to let go their grudges to ensure that there is peace and stability in the state. Because when there is violence at the end of the day, who do you govern? Even if you've won the mandate, it might be subjected to court. There will be violence in the state. There will be peace and security. So I must commend the Edo people for coming out and ensuring that the politicians were not able to use them as the tool to disrupt their state. Also, I must commend INEC for effective planning and implementation, especially the introduction of the Z pad, which ensure that this timely sending in of result to avoid a situation whereby results are tampered with either at the polling unit level, ward level, or even the local government level before it gets to the state collation center.
You know, usually when we are told to define democracy,
yes,
you know, it's rule of the people,
yes,
by the people, and for the people. But usually in our democratic journey, we've not seen much of the second part, that is, by the people.
Yes.
So has that been demonstrated in this election?
Yes. You see, after the election, we saw how the people of Edo State took to the street to celebrate the victory of Godwin Obaseki. It showed that they participated, and what they hoped for was what was eventually announced. Also, if you look at the spread of the victory, it showed that Godwin Obaseki was able to sell his agenda to the people, ensure that it was not about personality attack, it was about what he has done, which is for the benefit of the people. And this reflected in the vote. In fact, when I was looking at the results, there were projections that it might be difficult for the governor to make inroads into Edo North, which is the stronghold of the former APC chairman, the deputy governorship candidate of the APC, among others. But if you look at the result, even in the local government chairman of the former APC chairman, it was 56% to 40-something%. So it showed that he has been able to sell himself, and the people are at home with him. So I will say, to some extent, the people of Edo State have shown that, okay, the election was well conducted, and it is to their own benefit to re-elect the governor and own up the whole system.
You know, Dr. Ismail, thanks. Both this question is going to both yourself, yes, and Paul James. Of course, it doesn't concern Nick because he's supposed to be an umpire. Yeah. As much in the lead up to the election, we had the two leading candidates, and at some point we had other candidates who were our guests on Good Morning Nigeria, had conversations. And then, of course, some analysts we also had in the course of the conversation. At sometimes, it tended to happen like it was a contest between the incumbent and Adams Oshomole, who's the former governor and former national chairman of the APC. I'm sure our viewers might have seen this either on air or through the social media posts. There are certain phrases or expressions that were being used. At one point, I think one of our guests actually asked what it meant. Let me just put it in context so that you then now respond to the question I want to ask. Before the election, you were hearing Togba. Togba is a shortened form of Toragba. That is to say, it must be complete. And you saw them demonstrating, must be complete, made a constitutional requirement of 4 years plus another 4 years to which you are entitled. That is to say, it must be complete. Now, when the results were announced yesterday, you just started hearing Ogbane. Ogbane, meaning that it is now complete. So, from your own point of view, was that a key factor, a sway voters to say, look, Ize-Iyamu and Governor Obaseki, they are no personal enemies. They are friends and they are, in a sense, also related from two prominent families in Benin. But did that context devolve ultimately on those two phrases, Togba and then now Ogbane?
Thank you very much. If you look at the spread of the vote, the governor was able to secure victory in all the local government in Edo South, which is from Oredo, also Edo Central. You know, there's this unwritten agreement for power shift from the north, south, and the central. As you said, it must be complete. The people of Edo...
It's not what I said. It's what
okay, they said, yes. The people of Edo Central believe it will be to their benefit if the governor is able to complete his full tenure, that is 8 years, and power shall return to the central. As you all know, Professor Osumbo was there as governor between 2007-2008 before the court removed him. So there have been this agitation for power to return back. They believe if power goes back to Ize-Iyamu, he will have to spend 8 years before it comes back to the Eastern people, that is in the Edo Central. So I believe it was part of the agenda. Then coming to the issue of the former APC national chairman, I told people that, you see, Ize-Iyamu is a very strong politician. He might have, made better inroad if the election was about him and Obaseki, not between Oshomole and Obaseki. You know, the Edo people felt, in 2008, we fought against godfatherism. We should let it go. The same thing shouldn't repeat itself now. You understand? We should determine who governs us. The governance shouldn't be determined from either Abuja or any other state in the country. So as I said, there are a lot of factors to it. One, the power rotation factor, and also the fight against godfatherism.
Paul James in Benin, your comment on this?
I think for me it is a family affair that I don't also want to get involved in. It is purely from the political, for political reasons, and you begin to hear about this power sharing formula. But what plays out for me on election day was the fact that I saw resistance on the part of the people. The people were determined, and the people wanted to. The people demonstrated that they are the champions in this game. I mean, I sat in the hall during the National Peace Committee engagement with stakeholders, and also, of course, the engagement with INEC by stakeholders. And I saw supporters of one of the parties bearing logos, bearing emblems that have 4+4. And I said to myself, this was also a party that 4 years ago was condemning somebody on the opposing side, and now that the person is in bed with them, you are hearing 4+4. So these dynamics will continue to be there. This scheming will continue to be there. But ultimately, what I saw on Saturday was that people resisted. People showed that they are determined to. People showed their determination to ensure that their votes count. There was the side about mandate protection that we shouldn't forget about. That people, after voting, people stayed back and ensured the votes counted at the polling unit. Some people followed their votes to the ward, some to the LGA. In fact, as early as 2 a.m. on Sunday, the 20th of September, I received a call from one of our observers that was still at the State Collation Center trying to gain access. And the sense we got from there was that there are people lurking around the center that wanted to ensure that their votes truly counted. As at 12 noon, 1 p.m. yesterday, I also received calls from people that were encouraging us to go out to speak to what we saw in the election because they thought the process would be manipulated. And I said, no, this is the election of the people. And besides, INEC have done a lot of things. INEC have taken a lot of steps to deepen the integrity of this election. The gradual introduction of technology in our election, for me, is a plus. The Z-Pad that was introduced by INEC. So people have different fronts to view what happened at the polling units, and I think that process would not be circumvented by political parties. So again, I wouldn't want to go into that. It is a party affairs. You will not be surprised by the time you go to Ondo, you begin to hear alignments and realignments. It happens every other elections. But ultimately here, the champions for me remain the people of Edo State.
Sorry, I mean, Paul James, you say it's a family affair. Is it your family or their family?
Paul, good enough. You don't want to be dragged into Kingsley's Togba and Ogbane family.
It's not
affair.
mine. It's not mine.
Well, you raised it.
No, I raised it. But sorry, Claire. Sorry. There is another one. I mean, there's another one. You take this along. I mean, there's expressions you heard on the street. Edo not be Lagos. You heard that?
Oh yes, you? That's
so that's part of what you say.
Yes, okay.
So it may very well be that in Ondo they will be telling you Ondo not be Edo.
Okay. So Paul, but I'm sure there is another prism you may want to look at, and that's what is playing out now, not just in the Edo election, but I see it also in other developed climes. In the U.S., for instance, party versus individual politics. Now, right for us to begin to consider private candidature in our elections, in our electoral process?
Yeah, I think it is, the time is right for us to begin to consider independent candidacy. What played out in this election, for me, is more about the personalities than even about the parties. If you follow the antecedents of the parties and what people think of these parties in this state, some people wouldn't even have come out to vote on election day. Yes, I think this will also build into the conversation around electoral reforms. At the moment, we don't have that in our constitution, but I think that is the way to go. Nigeria need to start considering that. There are persons that, based on their merits, based on their personal achievements, if they come out to participate in the election today, I know definitely people are going to vote for them. But then we still have the challenge with party politics. If you want to go through the ropes of the political party, for you to emerge as a candidate for a particular party is a very Herculean task. Yes, I quite agree with you that the National Assembly, the civil society, we need concerted efforts here to ensure that we have that in our electoral laws, in our electoral framework, for us to begin to consider independent candidacy in our election.
Kingsley talked about the Edo Nobi Lagos issue, that we see. It's all over the place.
Claire,
yes.
I get the attribution right. I'm reporting what the voters or the views were from the street. Not Kingsley said.
Okay, that's understood, Kingsley.
That's right,
thank
understood.
You. Not Kingsley saying, but of course what, it's visible, what people are saying, what the electorate are saying in Edo Nobi Lagos. So do you think that was also a factor in determining, the outcome of the votes, where the votes, the swing of the votes?
It may have contributed, especially with the utterances attributed to one of the stalwarts of the APC just in a week of the election. I think that must have hit them below the belt, and people showed that resistance. But again, I wouldn't want to be involved in that politics. When people begin to say that, what comes to my mind was, for me, I would say Edo no be Bayelsa, because in Bayelsa we saw a different ballgame in the sense purely from the conduct of the election. Bayelsa was the election where we saw in 24% of polling units there was no election. In one of the local governments, specifically in southern Ijaw, in 51% of polling units, election did not happen. And in some of these places, returns were made. So far from the report we have received, from the 2,627 polling units in Edo State, only one of that polling unit have reported to us that election was not conducted, which I think for me is a very huge progress, and something I think INEC also need to consolidate on. Yes, purely from the conduct of the process, I think this is a very huge improvement over Kogi and Bayelsa election.
All right, Paul, thank you very much. Dr. Ismail, I mean, you've been itching to say something. I don't know what you want to respond to, whether it's the "Do Not Be Lagos" slogan
Togba Ogbane.
or Togba Ogbane, that's one. But if you want to do that, you quickly respond and I pose a question to you on whether you consider the conduct of the Edo governorship election last weekend as a template that INEC ought to take very seriously in future elections.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Kislin. Before I talk about the responsibility or the role of INEC, let me touch on the Edo No Be Lagos. Before I came in here, I had a discussion. I was telling the director.
No, keep your discussion
yes.
off the record.
Okay, so basically, my advice as a political scientist and as lecturer in international relations, political parties must take internal democracy very important. You know, someone can just sit down, as I stated earlier, in Abuja or Lagos or anywhere in the country and determine what happens in other states. These states are co-equal, you understand? Their fate shouldn't be determined by external powers. As he said, the utterances of political party leaders played a very key role. He's trying to shy from that, but I'm going to say it played a very key role because I took the pulse of people of Edo and even commentators on the social media. There was someone, after the video released by the leader of the APC, there was someone from Edo that said he's specifically going home to go and vote against godfatherism. So we must try as much as possible to ensure that we improve on internal party process and ensure that the space is thrown open for everyone to contest. And let me tell you something, the video was sort of a disservice to the personality of Ize-Iyamu. Because if you look at the previous election and the commentaries of people, he's quite strong. He's a former local government chairman, APC vice chairman, South, chief of staff, SSG. So he's quite on ground, you know, but people saw him then as an independent person that could take on the system. But now he's been seen as a sort of, I don't want to say puppet, but a sort of someone that will be controlled from outside the state. And coming to INEC, I must commend them for the conduct of the election. We hope this process is built upon for Ondo and Anambra and even the senatorial House of Reps and other by-election that are coming up. Finally, before I go on, we should ensure that the peace committee start on time. It shouldn't be a week or two to elections before we bring stakeholders together. You know, the peace committee, the IG of police, and also the issue of electoral offenders court or something like that, that should ensure that anyone that is caught, if there's an evidence, that person should be prosecuted if they engage in...
Why would you ask the peace committee to get into a situation where there is no fray? I mean, for instance, on the Edo election, the point was made, I think, on this program, I said that in passing, that the political elite in Edo State should consider it something of an embarrassment that the National Peace Committee was now coming in to say, look, gentlemen, enough of the hot air and enough of the cordials that you guys are wielding, sign that you'll be of good conduct. They had never had that previously in Edo. So we haven't seen the bullets flying yet in Ondo, and we do hope that the bullets will not fly. So if that situation doesn't arise, why would the peace committee get involved?
It is important to state that stakes are high in politics. As we all know, politics is all about authoritative allocation of values. What are those values when it comes to resources? Politicians at times, sorry to say, they tend to, you know, throw away this sense of ensuring that, oh, this belongs to us. Even after election, the Nigerian state or the Edo state continues to be. So there is need for that, you know, an umpire or someone from outside that will always pat them on the back and say, oh, you are going the wrong way, come back to the right way.
All right.
Togba and Ogbane. Thank you.
You are fascinated. Yes. You are fascinated by this Togba and Ogbane.
Thank you, Kisley. Those are the two words I've learned today. Yes. Dr. Ismail Bello, before we bring in Nick, I know you need to relax. Just take a back seat for that. So, we've been talking about godfatherism.
Yes.
And many people have been saying, look, criticizing it. But there are also those, especially the young upcoming politicians, who say, look, we can't, it's not really unprogressive as people think. Where do we draw the line between godfatherism and mentorship?
So thank you very much. As an academic and a researcher, I have mentors, people that I look up to. It now falls into the realm of godfatherism when that particular individual begin to tell me as a political office holder that, oh, you are supposed to appoint so-and-so person as commissioner, chairman, board, and so. There is nothing wrong if that...
Advisory.
Advisory, yes, thank you. Advisory. A clear example is what is happening in Borno State. We must give it to Senator Shettima. He played a key role in the emergence of Zulum, the professor. But he has stepped back. They can be meeting behind the phrase to offer advice on how to go about governance. He has the experience. But not the situation whereby someone sits somewhere and say, okay, this is the person we are going to give it to. I'm sorry to say, before the emergence of the APC standard bearer, it was already out there that the party chairman had settled for this person. You know, so even the disqualification of the governor and other aspirants was just made. It was already planned. So mentorship is very important. You know, there are people that are already in the game. They know how things go. They could simply help you and back off. When they say that, okay, you are deviating, they offer advice, and if you refuse to take the advice, they let you go and face the people. So we must, separate when it comes to the issue of mentorship and also godfatherism. Godfatherism is the extreme. When you want to determine, I'm supposed to govern, I'm supposed to represent my people, but by the time you tell me, oh, this is how we should do it, no, just advise or not instruct me, so to say, that this is how it should be done. So advice can be given, but not instruct or try to enforce. We've seen situations whereby some governors decided to, take the bull by the horn, and they were removed. They were removed by their godfathers.
All right, Dr. Ismail Bello and Nick Dazang and Paul James. Gentlemen, we're going to have to take a short break. Now, when we return, we'll face Nick.
A new edition of TV Guide is out, featuring great personalities from all walks of life. Expository interview with a young TV presenter who shows passion on what she does, Morayo Afolabi Brown of TVC. Pick a copy of this compendium of mind-blowing stories and get abreast with issues as regards media convergence, leadership, health, star profiles, star programs, fashion, sports, human angle stories, and lots more. Meet some media professionals within our space who have paid their dues in no small ways. TV Guide, very incisive, very educative and compelling. Grab a copy at the vendor near you or NTA stations nationwide. TV Guide, your indispensable companion.
All right, thank you for staying with us. This is Good Morning Nigeria, and we are looking at lessons learned from Edo 2020 governorship election. All our guests are still with us here in Abuja, and of course, Paul James in Benin. And let's get back to
Nick.
Yes, Kingsley, this one concerned me.
It's for you.
Yes, it's for me. Mainstreaming gender. Was it deliberate or was it based on well thought out assessment?
Claire, don't forget that we have a gender policy in the commission. And this gender policy mainstreams gender even at the level of recruitment of staff. It mainstreams gender at the level of appointments to sensitive positions. And we have a gender division. And this division is the equivalent of some departments in terms of the resources devoted to it. And this gender division is being laid by a very experienced deputy director. She has been deputy director for nearly 16 years. Very articulate, very sound, and she has been engaging with gender, of course, of the feminine side. Because when you mainstream gender, you also mainstream male and female. But we deliberately give emphasis on the females. And it's a policy, something we deliberately do. And we have had a policy, we have even reviewed it, and we do things consistent with that policy of making sure that we are gender sensitive in all our activities, in our recruitments and appointments.
Are you satisfied, Claire?
Go ahead, Kisley.
All right. Okay, Nick. Card readers were first introduced into our general elections in 2015.
Yes.
A recurrent problem with the card readers, sporadic failure. On Saturday, we also had the same thing. You've been an administrative secretary of INEC in the FCT. What exactly is the problem with the card reader? Is it mechanical? Is it electrical? Is it electronic? I don't want to, I'm sure viewers will be saying, look, don't tell us that any mechanical device or electronic device can fail at any time. Usually, the argument will be, yes, we have tested all of this, we have backup and so on and so forth. You deploy them on the day of voting, suddenly the card readers begin to fail. What is the issue with the card reader? Because part of the congestion you saw at some of the polling units in Benin arose from the fact that those card readers were either malfunctioning or they were not working optimally.
Yes, thank you for bringing this up because as you observed in one or two polling units, in fact, in the polling unit where the governor voted, the smart card reader malfunctioned. And we need to appreciate the type of technology we use. Most of these products have shelf lives. Your Android, your computer has maximum shelf life of 4 years if you use it optimally. We have started using these smart card readers in 2015, and this is 2020, 5 years after. So certainly, we'll begin to see some malfunctioning, some glitches, intensifying. We recognize that. And that was why we introduced the Z-Pad, which was supposed to complement, the smart card reader. We tested it in the by-election we conducted in Nasarawa State. But we saw that we had not mastered it. We had not perfected it. So we deferred its deployment in the Edo governorship election because we are looking at the fact that already we have the challenge of COVID-19. And if we deploy a technology that we have not mastered, it will not create its own challenges. And then you will now be trying to manage the crowd and then trying to manage the Z-Pad, which is a novelty. So we recognize that and we are working on it. And then even the permanent voter cards. The intentment initially was that these PVCs were going to serve for just 10 years. And the idea was that NIMISI was going to generate a database of its own identity cards that has greater longevity than the PVCs, and then will not transit from the permanent voter cards to the identity cards, generated by NIMISI. Unfortunately, its own campaign to get that database has not gained the traction that we need. So even the PVCs have issues because not all voters keep them properly. These PVCs have antennae embedded in them. And you find people putting them in their purses and sitting down on them. And when you do that, the antennae gets broken. And therefore, the smart card reader will also have challenges reading the PVC. So there are issues. And it's good that you have brought this up so that we can always explain and people can understand why these things are like this. In fact, we have reached a point where we now have to revalidate the registration that we did in 2011. If we have to continue with the PVCs, we need to redo them and give people fresh PVCs. Otherwise, the glitches we see will continue, will multiply. And in spite of this, what INEC does is that we station technical staff at the registration areas, so that whenever we have these challenges, they can dash in and, troubleshoot. But when they try to troubleshoot and the smart card reader doesn't work, we now replace it. And replacing it means that you have to reconfigure the smart card reader you are deploying, that is the replacement, to that particular polling unit, and it takes time. So these are issues that I think Nigerians need to know. And we keep saying that for us in INEC, the only thing that is secret is the actual act of voting in the cubicle. Everything we do is in the open, from our procurement to our budget to our deployments to our recruitments. Everything is, we put everything in the public domain.
Even the actual voting, in some areas were reported to have been exposed to, to the public. I don't know what INEC intends to do in those cases.
Well,
but this is my question.
Yes.
This is my question. The viewing portal,
yes,
where results were, sent to electronically, to what extent did it confer integrity on the outcome? To what extent did it eliminate, manipulative attempts? And I ask this because there are allegations that some results were tampered with and showed up in favor of, some other parties.
No, I don't think so. You see, the INEC results portal. Why I say I don't think so is because what you are uploading is the Form EC8A onto that portal. That is the result that was entered at that polling unit and was endorsed by all the polling agents and in the full glare of observers, the media, and the security agencies. And as soon as you do that, you now upload real time, And as at yesterday at 11:50 a.m., when we were about to close our own situation room, I can assure you that we were able to record people were able to view 2,397 of these polling units. So the outstanding this thing that were not viewed as at yesterday 11:55 a.m. Was 130. So I mean, if we continue deploying and we perfect it, and because the challenge we also had with the deployment of this portal is that there were areas, rural areas, where the uploading was not immediate because the staff had to move to areas where there was network. So in due course, we encourage the staff to ensure that as soon as they move to the wards, they upload so that people can view all the results real time at the same time. And what we did in Edo was that we widened the breadth, of the portal such that 2 million people could view simultaneously, without it getting clogged or having any glitches. Maybe for Ondo, we'll look at the prospect of increasing the capacity so that as many people as possible in Nigeria and abroad, can just log in. And it's very simple. You use www.anecresults.com. There's S after the result, results.com. And so many people have tried it. And in fact, I was in channels the other day, and the anchor was reeling out, was even updating me as we were talking. He had access to it. He was, logging into the portal and was telling me, updating me even before I went back to the situation room.
Okay.
So, it's something that works. And in Nasarawa State, for example, the country director of the International Foundation for Electoral Systems, called me to say that he excitedly said, look, I checked that thing, it really works.
Yeah.
So,
all right, Nick, thanks a lot. But on the issue of the card reader, just a point to make on before we bring in Paul James again. I don't know how much local content or local expertise INEC has sought with regard to working on the card reader or an alternative. You have a number of research institutes, technology institutes.
Let me say that the smart card reader was designed by INEC staff And all these portals that we've opened, since COVID-19, the portal that was used by political parties to nominate candidates and send the list to us using our access codes. And the same portal that we use also to accredit observers who observe the elections. And now, of course, this ANEC results portal, all of them were designed and generated by our staff.
Fine.
What you see, that is also why, most of these products designed by them take into cognizance our challenges. And of course, by and by, they will continue to perfect, with the right incentive, with the right environment created by the Commission. The limit, the sky is the limit of this gentleman in that department.
I was just, Nick, I appreciate what you have just said, but I was also going to add that you have Naseni, for instance,
yes,
where you have a broader range of expertise. You have many departments of electrical, electronics, engineering, Federal University of Technology that you have across the country, various federal, even state universities. Challenge them and then let them, let this be part of the work they are doing.
No,
of course, our colleagues from base,
I also would like you to know that we have worked with most of these agencies, with Naseni. We've worked with so many. They have also visited us and told us things they can do. Fantastic. And a lot of things have to also be allowed by law. We've always said our elections can be better and the outcomes can be known timeously if we are allowed to introduce technology, to further deepen the technology that we have introduced. But the laws have to be changed. Otherwise, we'll continue to collect results at the polling unit, registration area, local government, state, and in the case of a presidential election, manually. Whereas we can find recourse to technology and, fast track the project and further invest integrity and confidence in the process. So the way to go is for us to continue to work on the National Assembly, which remit it is, to hasten and fasten the process of electoral reforms. We've been working with the media, with civil society, but I think we need to intensify this effort because we began this journey since 2007. This is 2020, and all these reforms we've been hankering after are still yet to be effected by the National Assembly. I'm sorry to say, but we will still engage with them, and I think we'll need the support of other stakeholders, perhaps, to prevail on them to do the needful so that we can move forward.
Okay, thank you very much. Paul James from our Benin Network Studios. Often, when there are issues relating to the integrity of an election, security agencies have been blamed for their alleged complicity in the electoral malfeasance. What did you see on Saturday, and what was novel and therefore worthy of emulation going forward?
Before I talk on the issue of election security, I want to go back a bit to the issue around card reader. And that I think INEC should stop making excuses for this because we got 2,627 polling units. I know also with voting points around 4,000. And then the expectation is that you've got card readers for each that is configured to each of these polling units and voting points. And also you have a backup of card readers. What we saw on Saturday was that in 13% of these polling units, the card readers malfunctioned. Although they were replaced, it took time to fix some of them, it took time to replace them. We conducted election in over 120,000 polling units across the country. What is stopping INEC from mopping up more card readers that were used and put them in use, put them to test before their deployment? Election, I don't want us to reduce, I don't want all of this to become episodic. We are always too quick to move from an election. Edo is done now. The next conversation is Ondo. What has worked in Edo? What do we need to improve as we go to Ondo? And one of which I think is the smart card reader. It is becoming somewhat embarrassing. Is it the problem of the technology or the problem of the equipment? It is becoming embarrassing, but that for every election when you come, and it is almost like it is targeted to some high-profile politically exposed personalities, that you come to an election, and on election day you begin to hear issues around failure of some of the equipment to work around polling unit. So I think Ondo presents that opportunity that we need to begin to test some of this guardrail that we have around. I mean, we can mop up from other states and begin to test them and put them in use before they are deployed. To election security, as much as I had praised the efforts of this security earlier on, there were still challenges we saw on election day. For instance, our observers reported that in 8% of polling units, there were incidents of intimidation and harassment. And in 11% of these polling units, these were targeted at women who were either INEC officials, who were either voters, who were either security personnel, or even election observers. This is not what we expect of, if you begin to view election with, if you want to begin to view election from the elements of the essential principles of election. If you begin to put fear in the process, that would disrupt the idea of inclusive process, because it's going to put fear in the mind of people that are supposed to participate in this process. Yes, they did well to a large extent professionally, but I think a lot needs to be done. I mentioned earlier about places where we saw sporadic shootings. Police had mentioned here, the last time I was here with the DIG, he mentioned that they will station their men in the outer layers of the polling unit. How did this armed men had access to the polling unit if you had police stationed at the outer layer of the polling unit? It means somebody is not doing his work or their work well. This needs to be interrogated, and I think we want to see sanction as we plan for the Ondo election.
Paul James, thank you. We'll probably, if we do have time, we'll turn to you. But we've got some tweets here, so let's quickly take them before we continue. Kingsley.
Chris Simeon, the credible election brings about good governance, which makes democracy wax stronger. Now, this comes to the fore when the electorate is allowed to make their choice at the polling units with their ballots.
Omogbola Babs, so it's the wish of the people was reflected. It can only get better.
Badamasi Adamu, the conduct was commendable and cheers to the president for his efforts. The people's candidate emerged at the end.
Yunusa Idris, my salute goes to the good people of Edo State for standing against oppression and imposition. Kudos must be given to the president for giving an enabling environment for the electorate to exercise their civic rights.
Ishiaka Adegboye says Nigeria is in the right direction. Edo has shown the way. Congratulations to Obaseki.
Eshea Emmanuel, congratulations to the governor-elect Godwin Obaseki on his well-deserved victory at the polls.
Mike Anyakwo, Edo people have spoken. All Edos, irrespective of political affiliation, must respect democracy. The winner, Governor Obaseki, should immediately embark on reconciliation of a divided state as a result of the election, and also form an all-inclusive government.
And Ali Ibrahim Gimba Fika, Edo election is a way forward for Nigeria's democracy. Mr. President's approach towards election demonstrated a sense of care to the choice of Nigerians in electing their leaders.
Festus Akimboyewa, congratulations to Governor Obaseki on winning the election. Congratulations also to Pastor Isaiah Yamo for putting up a good fight. In life, you win some, you lose some. It's now time to put politics aside and work for the progress and prosperity of Edo people.
Sorry, Kingsley, I didn't conclude Ali Ibrahim Gimba's. He is also commending INEC and the security personnel, says they should also be commended for their fair play in the election. So let me take Raji Afiz Abidemi, I guess I'm right?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. The election was fair, and kudos to the security agencies and INEC officials. We want the same replicated in Ondo State come October. God bless Nigeria.
Law Alpha C, the people of Edo State have made a bold statement describing themselves as peaceful, courageous, and patriotic, while President Buhari has once again proven that he's a father to all.
Mutana Farouk, I commend President Muhammadu Buhari, INEC, security agencies, and the good people of Edo State for the conduct of the election. It has been described as one of the best elections in Nigeria so far.
Leo Fadaka, Edo State has pushed a reset button and a positive paradigm shift on election matters in Nigeria. Kudos must be given to President Buhari, INEC, and the security agencies for non-interference. Also, the people of Edo must be commended for their determination. It's proof that Nigeria can work properly.
Ahmed Mohammed, I must commend President Buhari and INEC for conducting a free, fair, and credible election. What happened in Edo is just a picture of what will happen in 2023. All right, we want to thank all of you for your tweets, and let's take a quick one now, just in less than 60 seconds, everyone, so that we can conclude this conversation, in good time. Okay, let me come back to you. Going forward, what should Nigerians expect from INEC and from the people themselves?
Thank you very much. This should be built upon, and as your readers people that have watched have said, we need to commend the president. We've seen presidents in this country that gave marching order to the security agencies to ensure they deliver their party. So commendation must be given to President Muhammadu Buhari for being neutral and to ensure that the election was free and fair. And as you've stated earlier on, INEC need to improve on its card readers. Because I saw when the former APC chairman had an issue in his polling, and also the governor. So kudos to INEC for the conduct of this, and hope this can be improved upon.
Okay, Kingsley, we'll go to Paul before we come back.
Well, now I want to come to Nick. Okay. Nick, one issue that also came up, not so pervasive though, is the quality of some of the returning officers. What is INEC going to do about this?
Well, I think you can see I'm taking my time
to respond.
60 seconds.
It speaks to the quality and standard of the educational system. From my small experience in the field when I was administrative secretary, you would come across even a professor having challenges filling in results. And part of it sometimes is, like I said, speaks to the quality of what is happening to our institutions, and also the lack of humility to even learn how to enter these results. Because, there are ways you have to enter the results such that they add up.
What are you going to do? Quickly,
so it means we need to, intensify training in that regard for the collation officers.
Thank you. Paul, James, so we have commended everybody, INEC, the security agencies. What about the media? In 60 seconds.
Coming to the media is, for me, one of the biggest allies for us in this election that has helped us to propagate our activities. But most importantly, also in the build-up to this election, they have been the one that have been in the forefront of providing voter education alongside other civil society organizations. I will want to commend their effort in that. But I also want to conclude by calling on the political class to take the issue of voter education very seriously. Voter education is for all and not just limited for some person. We've got about 1.6% of the of rejected ballot in this state that speaks to the poor quality of voter education. That as we move on to Ondo, we hope that they will also learn that their campaign will not just be reduced to attack some personality, but also discussing issues that concern the people and providing enough voter education.
Paul James, thank you. Paul James, Programs Manager, IAGA Africa, of course, one of the foremost election observation groups. We'd like to appreciate you and thank you and your other observer teams for doing a good job. Thank you.
Thank Thank you very much for inviting me. I appreciate this.
Let me also appreciate Nick Dazang, Director of Voter Education and Publicity, INEC. Thank you once again and congratulations.
Thank you, but let me also emphasize that...
You don't have time. Okay, just quickly.
That political actors must learn to defer to the majesty of the democratic process by conceding defeat when they are defeated.
Thank you. Dr. Ismail Bello, Lecturer, Department of International Relations, Bayes University. Thank you for your contribution.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And that's it.
Yeah, that does it for us. Ondo election is barely 3 weeks away. So, well, of course, we'll also be focusing on that, plus other matters arising from what we saw last weekend. I'm Kingsley Osadola. Good Morning Nigeria returns tomorrow, same time, 7 o'clock in the morning. Stay safe and be well.
So, it's Ogbane for us here on Good Morning Nigeria. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.